Hello and welcome to Control Delete Tutorials. My name is Jason, and today we're going to be looking at setting up animation in Unity. We are setting up the animation for the way I'm going to set up the demo is so that we can have a simple animated machine. I'm only going to be using Unity, so I won't be using anything like 3ds Max to create objects to bring in. So I'm just going to show you how we can set up objects so that we can animate them. So what I wanted to set up was, like I said, a very simple machine. So I'm going to start out with creating a 3D object, and I'm just going to start with a cylinder. And let's make sure our cylinder is at 0, 0, 0. If it's not, we can always right-click on Transform and just reset our object. Okay, and I'm going to be rotating this object 90 degrees in the X direction. So I'll just go ahead and type in 90. And then just so I can kind of make this look like a gear, I'm going to make my scale here 2. We'll make our width, we'll do that at like 0.5. And I'll do my Z value also at 2, that way it stays perfectly round. Okay. Then I'm going to create a box or a cube. We'll also make sure that's at 0, 0, 0, which it starts off that way. And I'm just going to make the cube here. So if I hold Control and I move up, I'm going to use my snaps here to kind of move this. So I just want to make sure it's kind of sunk in a little bit here. And that's good. So that's at 1.5. Might actually bring the scale of this down just a little bit. So maybe like 0.8. And you know what? Actually 0.8 is going to be just fine, just so I can make the teeth a little bit narrow and a little bit long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a rigid body object, more than likely a sphere, and I'm going to move it along the path of these gears. And I'm going to make the machine so that it can restart and set the animation up again. And hopefully it'll all work perfectly. So I'm going to make the other teeth here for my cube, so I'm just going to hit Control D to create another cube, and I'll hold Control and move that down just like the other one. And then I'll do Control D. Actually what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate both of these, Control D, and I'm going to go to Rotate by Center. I'm going to rotate these, so I'm going to hold Control, and I'll rotate these 90 degrees. And we'll just set that to 90 even. Alright, so that gives me all the teeth for my gear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these objects and I'm going to parent them to my cylinder. So the idea will be is I'm going to animate this cylinder rotated around. So I'm going to create two different types of gears, one that rotates clockwise and one that rotates counterclockwise. So I'm going to take this cylinder and I'll set up the animation for it first to rotate one direction, and then I'll do the other direction. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a folder here for my animations, and typically I'm just going to name this Anims, and I'll put my animation controllers and my animation clips in this folder. So in order to animate, we're going to need our animation tab, which I normally will just drag down here next to the console and project. And we will need our animator. Let's see, animator. And I'll typically just have that with my scene here. Alright, so let me set up some color here just so it's not so bright white. So I'll just make a new folder for materials. And maybe I'll make two, one for the teeth and one for the, I'll just do them all one color, that's fine. So I'll just create material, let's call this gear, and make it a little bit metallic and gray. I'll just add it to the separate parts here. So there we go. Okay, so that'll be my gear starting off there. So to set up the animation, I can simply select whatever the parent object is, and I can come down to animation, and I can create my animation from here. So it says to begin animating cylinder, create an animator, and an animation clip. So I'll say create, and I'll go to my assets folder, anims, and I'm just going to call this, we'll call it rotate, and I'm going to do clockwise, so I'll just put rotate CW for short. And so we're going to see that rotate CW down here. That's our current animation, and we can create another animation clip here also. But first, let's start our animation. So I'm going to have my first gear, I'll have it rotate to where it has one rotation every 10 seconds. So it'll be kind of a slow rotation. By the way, what I just did there to get more time was I hold Alt and I right click and drag, and that'll give me more or less time. You can also use these handles down here to change the time, and you can do the same thing that direction if you have multiple things to look at. So we're looking at 10 seconds, so I'm just gonna do this. So we animate at 60 frames a second, so if I want to get exactly 10 seconds, I can just type in 600. So 60 frames a second, 10 seconds, 600 frames. So I'm going to go there. I have rotate currently selected. So what I'm going to do is go into my rotation, and I'm actually going to set this back to 0 because I notice my rotation here is not set to 90 degrees, and I don't want to have any sort of wobble there. So I can set a key at 90, and then this is going to be set to 0. I'll go to frame 600, and I'm going to type in 360. Actually, since we've rotated this, this is going to be not rotated in the Z direction. So let me set that back. So we want this to rotate in the, should be the Y direction. Let's make sure we have everything correct here. So I'm just going to delete that. And make sure my numbers are the same here. Okay, so 600 and 3. Okay. Oh, I know. I forgot a step. All right. So let me get rid of the animator that this created. So I'm just going to remove that. So something I forgot to mention is this object should be parented to another object because I've rotated this. You can see here that this is, 90 degrees. That should be 0. And so I'm going to parent it to an empty game object which has all of its transforms set here. This is going to make it easier. That's why originally I rotated it in the Z direction, because the Z direction is the direction we should have started with there. So let's make sure those are all zeros, and they are. And we'll just go ahead and name this gear. And I'm going to call it CW because this one is the clockwise direction one. And then all of this gets parented to that. And while we're at it, we might as well make a prefab out of this. If you don't know what prefabs are, those are just prefabricated. It means I can use them again and again. And any changes I make to my prefab will change all the other ones that I have in my scene, which is handy. So I'll just say prefabs. And it's nice to stay organized here with our different folders. So we can just drag this down here into our folder, and it'll make a prefab. We can see over here our object. So any changes that I make, see how we're getting this kind of weird reflection here? That's known as Z fighting because these are the same width as the cylinder. I could just take all of these cubes and just ever so slightly pull them in. And then if I apply those changes to the prefab, it'll update the one down here. And that way, if I use this again somewhere, it'll already be set up the way I want it to be. All right, so now we'll do our animation. So we'll come back down here to our animation tab, create. We've already got one created, but I'm just going to save over it. just make that a little easier. Okay, so that's going to put our controller here, gear CW. We do not want to have root motion applied here. We do not need an avatar in this case because we only have one object and we don't need to reuse this again and again. Alright, so I'm going to go to frame 600. And let me zoom this out so we can see frame 600 here. Okay, so I don't need to set the first key because it's already set to 0. All I need to do is set the key on frame on the 10-second mark. So I go to my rotation, I type in 360, and now we can see it's actually rotating correctly. So if I hit play down here, we can see how that's rotating. And you know what? I'm going to go to 600. I'm actually going to do a negative 360. So that way, let's see here, where's my camera? So based off of this point of view, go to frame 600 and negative 360. All right, let's make sure that's right now. So as I play it, it will rotate clockwise. As our name implies, rotate clockwise. Okay, so I'm going to turn off record here so I don't record anymore. And this is going to be set up to automatically loop. So once it plays the animation, it's going to come back. Okay, so with this selected, if I go to the Animator, I'm going to see now in my Animator tab, I've got this entry point. So that means when this object appears first in whatever game, what is the first thing it's going to do as far as animation? It's going to transition, and this arrow tells us what direction this transition is happening, to rotate clockwise. Now I can go in here, and if I want to play this gear at speed of 2, like twice as fast, I can type in 2 here and it'll play faster. I'm going to leave it currently playing this speed. Okay, so that's my normal gear. Okay, so I'm just going to apply these changes to the prefab. So that way, if this gets deleted, I have the prefab down here. So all I have to do is drop this in, and you'll see that the teeth have been scaled in, so I get this little ridge. And if I hit play, we'll see that my gear turns. Okay, so that is one gear. So what I'm going to do is create a counterclockwise gear. So to do that, I'm going to use the same prefab that I have here, but I'm going to duplicate it, which I don't really need to duplicate it because I've already got it saved as a prefab down here. And I'm going to type in gear CCW, counterclockwise. I'll hit enter. And I'm going to go to my anims. And I'm going to go to my, let's get rid of that cylinder one. That's my old one. So I'm going to go to my controller here, and I'm going to duplicate that. And so this is how I would set this up if I already had an animation controller. I'm going to set that to counterclockwise. I'm going to go here and create a new clip. Go to the animation tab, and this will be rotate CCW. Okay, so we see there's no keys here now. So now I can do the same thing. I'll hold Alt and right click, get down to the 10-second mark. I'll just type in 600 frames so I know that I'm going to be exact here. And I'm going to rotate my gear. So last time we did this, we did 360, which is the direction we want. Okay, so now if we play that back, we'll see that it rotates counterclockwise. Now this is counterclockwise based off of our camera in the viewport. Okay, so that's good. Make sure we turn off animate. And you can always tell when animate's turned on because we'll get these keys showing here red. Sometimes, depending on the version of Unity you have, there we go. these will also be red. So something to keep in mind there. All right, so we have our animation, and we can see that our animator has this other animation in it. Now, we are still on the, is this the, let me see which one we're on here. Okay, so this is the gear clockwise, so I don't need that animation in there. And gear counterclockwise, I can bring in that animation. I'm going to right click on it and say set as layer default state, which means now it's going to play this animation. So I'll delete that one out of there. And on my gear, I'm not going to use the controller for clockwise. I'm going to use the one for counterclockwise. That way it only has that animation in there. Okay, so we have our clockwise. Counterclockwise has the counterclockwise one. And this gear is set to counterclockwise. So if I hit play, we should see that that's moving counterclockwise. Good. Alright, so I'm going to make a prefab out of that one. So I'll just drag that down. And now we have a clockwise and a counterclockwise prefab. So I'm going to bring my clockwise one back in. Go back to my scene. And I'm going to just set up a very small sort of machine. So it's not really a machine. It's got gears, and I'm going to move a sphere along those gears and try to move them back to one another. Okay, so we have my clockwise one, so that's going to push the ball this direction. So I'm just going to start by moving some of these over. So I'll set 4 that way. This is my clockwise one, so I'm going to move it down. And I want to leave enough space so that if I have a sphere in here, it's not bumping the top of these gear teeth. So I'll do like -6 in the height there. Okay, so I'll duplicate this. Actually, no. We'll do a small enough one set up here. Okay, so the sphere is going to come in. This is going to roll it around to over here. I might duplicate one of these over this way just in case it rolls past. So I'm just Control D to duplicate these. And I'm just going to bring this back over here. And then I'll make something to kind of carry it back up. And we'll see how that kind of works. Okay, so now to create our object. And I want to make sure all of our gears are kind of working here. And I'm going to just go to my camera and make sure I can see everything. So I can see the little preview down here. I'll zoom this back out a little bit. And I'm just going to rotate the camera down a little bit just so we can kind of see it from up here a little. Let's move this up a little higher. And I'll rotate it back down. Okay, I'm going to hit play just to make sure everything is working all right. Okay, so these are all rotating to the right. These are all rotating to the left, so that's good. All right. So I'm going to save my scene before I do anything else, just in case I don't want to lose anything. So I'll create a new scenes folder. And I'll just call this main because it's the only one I'm using. Okay. So now I'm going to create my sphere object. So we'll just go into Game Object, 3D Object, Sphere. And that's the size of my sphere. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So I'll just make it 2 times bigger. Okay. And I'm going to have it start off just kind of in the middle here. So when it falls down, let's make sure, yep, I just want to make sure everything's lined up in the Z to 0. So we're going to put a rigid body on here. And that'll allow us to a rigid body component, which is under physics, rigid body. This will allow us to have physics on this object. So now the object has gravity, so it'll fall. That's good. So we're going to leave our mass and drag and everything here the same. The only thing I'm going to change is the constraints, because right now I don't want this object to fall out of alignment, and since we're dealing with physics, I don't want it to like fall off either side here. So I'm going to say freeze my position in the Z direction, because I want it to move in the X and Y direction here. That's our green and red arrows. It needs to be able to move in all of these directions. I don't want it to move out of the Z. Likewise, I don't want it to rotate any direction besides Z. So I'm going to lock rotation on those. And you know what? I think I'll put a texture on here. So let's see here. I'll just go to my materials, create material, and we don't have any textures already in the scene, do we? Might be able to use this just so we can kind of see that it's rotating. We might be able to see that depending on how that's applied. Let's see what it looks like. Let me name this ball. Okay. And we will set that just to be kind of metallic and red, just so we can kind of see that a little better. So we might be able to see this, you know, whatever this texture is here, kind of wobble around a little bit, just to tell that we have some rotation there. Alright, so we have physics applied to it. So if we hit play, we should be able to see something happening here. Okay, so it rotates down, and oh, we're really close to getting that to roll up on the other one. Okay, so we'll make some adjustments and see if we can't get that to happen. Alright, so we'll first just try this back at its regular size. See if maybe it's a size issue. Okay, so now it's getting carried over. Oh, so now it's just a little bit too small. So it's falling just in between there. Okay, so we'll set this 1.5. See how we do there. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, and it did end up falling over. Luckily it did catch it though, so that's good. Oh, we're getting the same sort of rolling kind of happening where it's getting caught up. Let's see if it ends up making it over. I don't think so. That's funny how I did that on the other one. It made it through, but then it kind of made it here. Oh, it's so close too, to where it looks like it would do it. It might eventually, but we don't want to wait around for that. So let's change the density of this ball. Maybe give it some more mass. Let's go actually a little bit heavier there, because it is pretty floaty. I think we might run into the same issue there where it's rolling up and over. So one of the things we can do with objects is we can create what's called physics material. So I'm going to create a folder for this. And so there's a couple things we can do here. So I'm going to right click, create, and we're going to do physics material. And we'll just call this ball. And I can make another one for the gears. Let's see here, physics material, gears. Okay, so what we can do is add properties here. So I could say, let's make sure that these objects have a lot of friction. You know, so if I put, you know, let's say 10, 10, no bounciness, and then we'll do maximum friction and minimum. There shouldn't be any bounciness though. Now the ball, I can do the same thing. And if I go 10, 10, no bounce. And so now I can apply these here. So this object on the collider, there's a material. I just drag that in. Okay. And then on all of the gears, we have the cylinders and we have the cubes. So to apply it to all the cubes, I can just type in cube. It's going to show me all of the cubes here. I can select all of them. Now they all have box collider, so I can access all of their box collider components. And I just apply gear there. And then I'll type in cylinder. I don't have to type in the whole thing, just the first part. I can do the same thing. Use that gear material. Alright, so let's see if that helps at all as far as friction is concerned. Okay, so it's not sliding quite as much. We're still getting a little bit. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move these a little closer together. So I'm going to take my gears here. I'm going to move them just so they overlap just slightly. See if we can avoid this problem that we're getting. I'm holding control to select multiple here. And we'll see if that gives us any better luck. Because it's just the timing thing right now as far as where these are kind of hitting. It's just not enough to quite get that up and over. Alright. So, I'm going to come into my Animator. Wrong one there. And I'm going to go to my anims, gear counterclockwise. I'm going to set my rotation here and see if maybe if I speed this up or slow it down, if it'll affect this to allow me to change this. So let's go with the speed of 2 on both of these. Now this might give us the same exact problem, or it might make it to where now it's moving too fast. Yeah, see, so we're actually getting the same issue where they're just kind of pushing it. It's not giving me enough to roll that over. So let's see if we change the mass of our sphere again. Let's see, we do have that applied. Let's see what our friction is again set to on these. So ball is 10. Gears, I set both of those to 10. Yeah, it's really just not enough. If I had too much friction though, we're going to have probably a different problem. Oh, let me set the speeds of these back. See if we can. Alright, so I'm going to change the size of my sphere one more time. I'll try. Before I had it at 2. That worked at one point. It's still just making it so it's not quite enough to get over the hump there. Oh, so close. Alright. We're good that way. Okay, good. I think. Alright. Starting to worry that this wasn't going to work whatsoever. one of the reasons is it's just sometimes physics objects are just, you can't predict on how they're going to kind of work. All right, so the last part of the animation is I need something that is going to take it from down here and bring it back up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a kind of an L-shaped box, so it'll kind of catch it, move it up, and dump it back over here. So I'll just minimize these. Alright, so I'm going to create a new game object, and since I got this all working, let's save that scene. Okay, so new game object, box, and I want to make sure that the width is wide enough here. So in my Z direction, I'll set that to like 4 is going to be enough. Let's go 5 just to be safe, and we'll make sure it's wide enough. So that's our X direction. We'll go 5. Actually, we'll probably do 4 and 4. We'll leave it 5 and 5. We'll set this to 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to take the box here, and I'm actually going to move it over to where it lines up on the side here. So it's 2.5. And then I'll rotate this 90 degrees. Oh, too far. There we go, 90. Oh, duplicate it and rotate it 90 degrees. And I'll move that back to 0. And I'll move it up to 2.5. Okay, so that gives us a little area to catch this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to parent this to another game object. So I'll create empty. Let's call this basket because it's catching it. And just reset my transforms there. And I'll parent both of these to the basket. Okay, and I'm going to change this to pivot point so that it's where its pivot point is. So I'm going to start this object off over here. So just so I can make sure it's definitely going to catch this. Okay, actually let's move that back over a little bit. I'll go -17. That should definitely catch it. So if it rolls off of here, it'll catch it here. Okay, so now we're going to set up an animation for this object. So all this object is going to do is it's going to move up, and it's going to rotate so the ball will fall back into this little pit. And while I'm at it, let's make sure, I'll just make sure these have the same physics object that we created before. So we'll just use the gears one. Alright, so back to the basket. So we go back to animation, create, anims, let's call this basket, save. And so now I just need to kind of time this out. So I'm going to start off where it moves up. So maybe it takes, let's say, 2 seconds to get up to the top here. So there's 2 seconds, 120 frames. And animate is already on. So I'm just going to move this up. Okay, and from this point, I want it to start rotating. So what I'm actually going to do is make sure my my rotation here in the Z value, I'm just going to set a key for it. I'm going to set it back to 0 so it doesn't rotate. Okay, so notice from this point, let me set that back to 0. Alright, so that's going to come up. and it's going to hold that position maybe for half a second. So I can just select these, Control C, Control V. Now you notice that's going to give my basket or my elevator here this where it kind of comes up and settles back down. That's because it auto blends between all the keyframes. So you can change that in the curves. If I want this to be a flat line here, the way I do that is I select my rotation, and that's going to be my should be my Z rotation for that. Yeah, my Z rotation, so we can see the colors here, or my position. So we can see the color there for that. So all I have to do is right click on this, and I can say right tangent. So that's how the keyframe information is to the right, and just say linear, and then it flattens that out. So if I play the animation now, it just comes up and stops. Now you might like it to where it kind of comes up and settles back down. That's fine. Okay, so it comes up, stops, and now we'll have it animate over and rotate. So I'll move that over slightly, and I'll have it start rotating down from here. And let me just position that way. Okay, so it comes up, rotates down, and that should deposit the ball somewhere around there. Now the other problem with this is we need the timing of this. So what would happen in this case is it would loop and it would go back to where it started. Well, I'm going to have it animate back to where it started. So I'm going to have it hold these frames. So Control C, Control V to duplicate them. I'll have it move back to where it was, and I'm going to have it go a little faster on the way back. So, oh, copied the wrong ones over. Oh, I guess I didn't. No, that's okay. Okay, so that tips back. And then I'll just go to the 8-second mark here. And I'll copy the ones back at the beginning. And I'll have it hold that position for 10 seconds, or for 2 seconds at the 10-second mark. So I can just duplicate those again. Okay, so hopefully that'll give it enough time so we can time out. And I don't want that to blend coming back. So just going to change my tangents here. Right tangent, linear. That should be nice and flat. See how my position, that looks good. That looks good. All right. So no dips, it all continues and just holds that position. All right, so now we'll play it and we'll see what happens. Now if I'm way off, I can just offset my timing of this animation. So let me save my scene, turn off animate, and we'll hit play and see what happens. Hopefully everything still continues to work the same here. Problem with physics is you kind of never can tell exactly if they're going to behave the same way. Oh man, I thought I was going to get stuck again. Alright, so let's see. It'd be nice if it works the first time. Really? Okay. So let's see if it starts back over. So this should come down, should roll back, and then it plays again. I don't know what the chances are that it actually goes over again. I wasn't having so much luck with that yesterday when I tested this out. But ideally what we would do is we'd have a trigger object over here that would play this animation once the ball got onto it. Oh, see, we got lucky there. Yeah, so basically I just wanted to show how we can kind of set up animations to do different things, drive different objects in our games and stuff like that in Unity, but just really wanted to show you guys how to set up those animations, how do we set up the different controllers, how do we set up rotation and movement and things like that. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please check out some of the other Unity videos that I have. Like, comment, subscribe. There, it's finally failing. And yeah, if you like this video and you want to see how maybe to set up that trigger for the animation, leave me a comment. Let me know if you want to see that, and I'll get on that part of the video. So again, thanks for watching.